So you had a group of guys that you won with, and all of them sort of had opportunities to contribute and such. How tough will it be to potentially make changes, having won the thing, and how much will, the way guys are playing in the moment factor into, maybe taking spots that they didn't have before?
It's August, and the roster at Four Nations is 23. The roster for the Olympics is 25. So theoretically, you could have the whole same team with 2 extras. That's all I can say now. No, in all seriousness, it was great to be here and celebrate with that group of guys, because as soon as Four Nations ended, everybody left, and so we've never been together, as a group since then, and so it, brought a smile to my face, and I think everybody was genuinely moved to be in the room together, what maybe one last time. But in saying that, to sit here and this is, we got to turn the page. Now the big one's is coming up in a few months, and the goal here is to make sure everybody leaves Calgary with one thing in mind: is the number one thing they want to do is make the Olympic team. And I'm proud of the guys at Four Nations, but now this is going to be a year later, and we're not. The favoritism is who putting the best team together that's going to help us win the Olympics.
Beyond the social side of this week, like what, from the coaching staff's perspective, do you want to accomplish here?
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing about Four Nations, we're rolling back the same group, and by no means, the Four Nations is one of the greatest tournaments, if not that I've ever been a part of. It was a wonderful experience. It captivated the hockey world. It captivated 2 countries and made people that probably don't watch hockey that often watch. So are we a step ahead in some areas? Yes. But to get everybody back together on the same page, because in a couple weeks we're going back to our day jobs, and then all of a sudden, the Olympics are going to be here before we know it. But we have set the table for, we do have a little bit of a process now of what to do and what to expect, and it's. But our job is to take the Ferrari and make it better, and that's what we're doing here.
Jon, having guys like Connor and Macklin, teenagers that don't often make Team Canada, what do you hope they got out of these past few days?
Well, listen, there's 43 players here, and there's going to be 25 going to the Olympics. Some guys are not going to make it. Those 2 might. We don't know who's not going to be here. The other thing is we haven't even factored in, if players get hurt during the year. This is if everybody's healthy. But this is the 2026 Olympics. There's going to be a 2030 Olympics. There's going to be a 2034 Olympics. And, these kids might make it. But if they don't, they've been a part of something that will help them moving forward. And I think that's a great thing Hockey Canada's done, is they've pulled a whole group of guys together that are with a little longer in the tooth, and some young bucks. But in the end, we didn't bring guys here because they were young. We brought them here because they deserve to be here, and it's good for them.
Jon, what would you say is the biggest challenge or the hardest part of coaching a Team Canada?
There's only so much ice that can go around, that's, but honestly, I would sit here and say an environment like this is having guys check their egos at the door. And you walk in and you see the maple leaf, it's on your crest. Guys that are used to playing 20 minutes, power play, penalty kill, and they might come in here and play 10. And it's how those guys can adapt to that role. And I think a big part of us winning the Four Nations was we had a whole group of guys that checked their ego at the door, and even the best of the best who were used to playing, 24, 25 minutes, were playing under 20. Now, in part of that was because the talent level and the pace of the game was so strong, the guys, and they'll admit it. It was hard for them to play more, but for me, the greatest thing about Canada is these kids check their egos at the door and they play for the Maple Leaf.
Jon, you can talk here about small moments. It seemed to resonate with a few people. Can you take us behind the scenes there on what your message was and a few examples of the moments that you highlighted?
I don't know. That's it's something for us that everybody's going to remember 97's goal. I'll remember it for the rest of my life. But there was a lot of moments that got us to the big one. And I think for us, it's that's the work, that's the process. And you can't get there without doing a whole bunch of other little things. And I think our guys have really embraced that. And we have this this line, moments over minutes, and you have to embrace that to be a part of Team Canada if you want to hang a gold medal around your neck.
John, do you anticipate the style of play to change because it's under IIHF rules?
Style of play in what way? Is there going to be a bunch of fights?
I was just about to say that, exactly.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I would sit here and say there's certain countries that probably get together and there is a rivalry that's been built and things might happen, but the two teams played in the final and that didn't happen. And so I think environment is set up for different situations. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but if people are lining up to see the 9 seconds they saw in Montreal, and can't sit here and say for sure that's going to happen.
Pretty unique to have this opportunity to piece this roster together in back-to-back years. Having been through it last year, on the fly during the season while you're coaching, were there things that you kind of reflect back on and maybe, I don't know, do different, or how does last year's process?
It's hard. The one thing about everybody gets second guessed in everything they do, and quite often I second guess your reporting, but it's like.
Fair.
But let's be honest. In all seriousness, when you win, it kind of can be hard to second guess. But we can second guess, internally, and the margin of players, it's so small, and how good they are. The big thing for us is not looking at the top 30 scorers and grabbing the top 30 Canadians or 20 Canadians. It's picking the right team. And I thought our management staff, at Four Nations was Don Sweeney, and now at Olympics it's Doug Armstrong. And Doug was a big part of the whole process of Four Nations as well. These guys, it's tireless what they do to scout these players. And so it made the job much easier for the coaches when we got down to it and who we're going to finalize the roster with. But it's the one thing I will sit here and say, players aren't getting gifts. These guys are going to have to earn it on a nightly basis. And the fact you have a hat trick one night and then maybe aren't the same for the three, you'll be watched. And so the big problem with this is when all these players come and play the Tampa Bay Lightning, we get their best. So it's don't really like that.
John, you coached in the biggest games imaginable that can be played. I mean, how does the Four Nations compare to the other stages you've been on?
I get asked that,
level
the Stanley Cup and Four Nations, and you grow up as a kid. You're not sitting there as a little kid trying to win the Four Nations Cup. It wasn't there. So it's a different feeling. But I will say, I don't know if I've ever been in a hockey environment, I'm not sure I ever will, that was led off first and foremost when Mario Lemieux walked on the ice opening night in Montreal. I never saw a building or felt a building shake like it did, and the game hadn't even started. And then fast forward a couple nights later, and those 9 seconds, show me a building that'll ever replicate what happened and the feeling and intensity that was going on that night. That'll be a tough one to beat.
When you talk about building the right team, do you anticipate the criteria being very similar to a year ago? Because, as Sid pointed out yesterday, it's an NHL ice service you'll be on over in Milan.
It is, and and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think if all the teams have NHL players on it, it's NHL refs, so there'll be a lot of familiarity in what's going on. But the roster is going to be built to win, and that's the only way I can really put it.